You guys see those things in the corner? I like what I see in the corner. Here, let me just show you what those eggs belong to. Grab the male because he's the prettiest. Whoop. He's also most nervous. There you go. Chihuahua. So you got some nice Chihuahua eggs. Gonna incubate those and we'll have some nice little baby Chihuahuas soon. Available for sale. So last week on Babies of the Week, we saw that we had hatched out a crested gecko and a gargoyle gecko. Well, between now and then, we've actually had another gargoyle gecko hatch and 3 more crested geckos hatch. Now, I separated the gargoyles into this glass terrarium here and the cressets into this one. Now, the reason why they're not together is because the gargoyle geckos are a little bit bigger, and I think I mentioned it last week, but usually gargoyle geckos, once they start putting some size on, they grow rather quickly. I find they grow a lot quicker than crested geckos actually, and to top it all off, they're pretty aggressive with one another. They're not very social geckos. They'll actually try eating each other's tails and things like that. So that occasionally happens with 2 gargoyle geckos that are housed together. So I don't even want to attempt to put a gargoyle with a crested gecko. But anyways, I'm going to show you guys how I set them up, how I set these babies up. You guys can see it's a really basic setup. We have paper towel at the bottom here, and we have one plant hanging in the corner, which is probably where the geckos are often going to spend most of their time. And you guys can see we have a little water jet here, and in a couple minutes I will explain what that water jet is used for. But I just want to show you the babies right now. So you can see this guy pretty good. He's actually really pretty right now. And our gargoyle geckos are all pretty much red stripe animals. So right now this baby just basically looks black and orange, but he'll probably end up looking like the adults. These type of geckos, along with the crested geckos, they'll change color a lot if you compare when they're born to what they'll actually end up as. So you see that guy just hopped away. His brother is actually pretty much the same, well, his sibling is actually pretty much the same color. Now, one of the reasons why I really like gargoyle geckos is they could look like something completely different depending on the time you're looking at them. You see, he kind of almost has a bluish gray undertone to him and some orange on him. Well, that bluish gray will actually fire up black just like the other one, and the orange will get just as bright. So it's really cool how gargoyle geckos could be so light during the day and then could fire up black like the other one we had just seen. So I'll put that guy right there. Another reason why I really like gargoyle geckos is I find even as babies they're less skittish than crested geckos. So let's look at the crested geckos that we hatched out this week. One of them hatched out pretty small actually, and its sibling actually did not hatch. I opened up the egg and unfortunately the baby was dead inside, which is just something you have to deal with when you breed animals. You know, not all your babies are gonna make it, and I just knocked these guys down, so they're gonna be jumping all over the place. But you guys could see we got what appears to be 2 tan looking bicolors, which is basically just a crested gecko that's almost uniform in color. Sometimes the dorsal coloring will be a little bit lighter than the rest of the animal. And then we have a little extreme harlequin over here. I believe this is the biggest baby that hatched, and its sibling is actually pretty much the same size as it right down there. So I'm just gonna put this back. It was a crazy wake-up call for these guys, which are obviously a nocturnal gecko. They were sleeping pretty much, and I knocked their plant down. So they'll be a little bit freaked out now. But you guys could see jumping a lot. Like I said, I find them a little bit more skittish than gargoyle geckos. Nonetheless, they're pretty cool. People really like them. And actually, before I show you what these nozzles are for, I'll explain the cage a little bit, the cage setup. So basically you could see we have paper towel at the bottom. Reason being is I don't want to put them on something like, let's say, plantation soil, because the babies, they're really terrible hunters. Sometimes if they're striking, trying to eat a cricket, they'll get a mouthful of dirt. Usually it doesn't really do anything to them, but it has happened on occasion where a baby has actually choked on this stuff. So until they're about this long, I would not put them on plantation soil. And now the reason why we use paper towel is obviously no risk of impaction, and it's pretty absorbent. Which brings me now to these jets. These jets are actually hooked up to a Mist King. A Mist King is basically a mister that, well, it's basically a pump, a programmable pump, and it will basically mist your cage a couple times a day. It's crazy programmable. Like, you could basically, using the little computer, set it to either spray every second day, spray every day, or spray every weekend, things like that. It's really programmable compared to like other things that you see out there, like the Hagen Monsoon or whatever like that, and even the Zoomed. I forget what the Zoomed one is called. I think it's the Habamist or whatever, but it's a product that beats out all of those, and especially something like the Reptifogger or fogger machines. They don't really do much. I'm not really a huge fan of those fogger machines, but the Mist King is something that actually a lot of zoos use to spray their animals that require a little bit of humidity. And you could actually program the amount of time that it's going to spray the cage for. You know, a couple of seconds, multiple times per day. If I wanted, like, we have a Europlatus cage, which is drained. We cut a hole into the bottom of the glass, so the water actually drains down into a little basin that collects the excess water. But that one, we have it running about 12 times a day, and it sprays for about 6 seconds. But here we're only running these jets because it's crescent geckos once a day for a couple of seconds, and that's about it. Because if we were to do it anymore, obviously these paper towels would get very soaked, water would build up, stagnant water, it'll smell really bad. It'll be a cesspool for bacteria, especially if the crescent geckos decide to defecate on the ground, because normally they do it on the window, and that wouldn't be fun. But Mist King, I give it a 10 out of 10. Fantastic product. The only thing is that you should use distilled water, at least distilled water. Here we actually use reverse osmosis water, just because we have a machine, because we have a saltwater section down below me. So that's readily available to us, but at least distilled water, because you don't want the hose and the jets to get blocked up because of the buildup of different minerals that you'll find in regular tap water. So hopefully I didn't just spam too much BS for you guys, and you guys actually managed to absorb some of all of what I just said. Figured I would show you these Gargoyle Geckos, since they're right over here. And this is one of the females we have. Very pretty looking geckos. These are my favorites when it comes to all these geckos that come from New Caledonia that are kind of housed the same. I really like Gargoyle Geckos. They're super tame, super friendly. Like I said, not skittish at all. This will just sit in my hand, and very tame. Now, actually, what I could do is give you guys a tip. Now, most of you guys know that crescent geckos, things like that, gargoyle geckos, lychee geckos, and chua geckos, they eat crescent gecko diet. Well, some of you guys are not able to get the consistency proper or whatever like that. You have difficulties mixing it, like there'll be chunks in it and stuff. Go to like a supplement store that sells basically like shakers that you would make a shake in, you know, bodybuilding store or whatever, and just pick yourself up one of these cheap cups. And basically it comes with a blender ball inside, and it makes mixing the crescent gecko diet really easy. I of course have like a bunch of these, so I just decided to bring one in to use for just the crescent gecko diet. These guys weren't born this week, but it's kind of something cool, I guess. We actually have 9 of these. If anybody's interested in some Madagascar giant day geckos, please let me know, because we have a ton of them and we have no idea what to do with them. These are just 2 babies that hatched recently, quite small. We have about 9 that are baby to juvenile size, and we have an adult pair that we're looking to part with. Not because we don't like them or anything like that. It's just that we had originally bought the pair to sell to somebody, and well, nobody ended up purchasing it. So they've just been breeding for us like crazy, and all the babies are super healthy. And the babies are actually a lot tamer than the adults. The adults, I believe, were wild caught, so they're very, very skittish. The babies aren't as bad though, and I say that now, but if you guys have ever worked with Madagascar day geckos, you know these guys are lightning fast. And I'm not going to push my luck anymore because I don't want them to run out of the cage and then for me to lose my mind. So that's it for a very prolonged Babies of the Week segment. Told you guys about the Mist King, how we set our babies up, and a little bit about Gargoyle Geckos. So, hope you guys enjoyed this segment, and let's move on. So guys, another segment that we're going to have from now on this show is going to be the equipment / product review. Now, I'm not always going to review different items, but I will on occasion, because let's face it, there's a lot of really crappy products out there in the reptile industry, stuff that you don't need, stuff that works terribly. Some stuff is actually dangerous to your animals. But for today's episode, we're actually going to go over 2 pieces of equipment that I think everybody should have. Well, more so this one than this, because this obviously is used for bigger animals, snakes and things like that. But this first product I'm going to go over is a pair of hemostats. Now, some people will refer to these as tongs, feeding tweezers, things like that. This is actually a pair of hemostats. Basically, with a scissor action, anything with this kind of scissor action is hemostats. Tweezers are just something where basically, like if I were to turn these around, you're pinching down on them to close them and open them. This, you're using your fingers, and it's really easy to use. They can lock together. So let's say you're feeding a bigger animal, or you're feeding a big prey item to an animal, and you're going to be hanging it by the tail or by the scruff of the neck or whatever. You can actually lock these into place so you won't drop it. The reason why I prefer hemostats to like feeding tweezers and things like that, like example, the Hagen ones that have the little rubber tips on the edge of them, those are terrible. They're absolutely terrible. You'll drop the rat every time. You need something with nice grips, such as this tool here. This is actually made by Gatormade, a company we have up here in Canada. So I like these a lot, and they're not just used for feeding. What's nice about these ones is they're curved, because you could get smaller hemostats that are just straight. This has the curved tips, which I really like, because you could also use these for spot cleaning and things like that. Let's say you need to get into like a crevice or something like that. It's very easy because of the curved tips. So hemostats, I definitely recommend that anybody with snakes gets for sure. Feeding with your hands is probably like the stupidest thing you could do. That's how you get bit, and when you get a feeding response bite, that's when it really hurts. Now, a little story time here. I was actually using hemostats that were a little bit shorter than this to feed a big Burmese python, a 10-footer, and the Burmese python completely missed, grabbed me by the hand. It came up to try to wrap my arm. I put my leg in the way. I waited a couple minutes. The python let go. I was bleeding quite a bit, but I don't even have marks anymore. So, but yeah, hemostats go with the appropriate size. This is fine for snakes that I would say are like probably 5 foot to maybe 6 foot. You could obviously get a smaller pair, but you're always better off to go with a bigger pair of hemostats, because that'll make you further out of that splash zone where the snake could actually tag you. So hemostats I definitely recommend. And again, that's for lizards too, because there are some lizards that people will hand feed and things like that. So hemostats is good for lizards too, obviously. And again, like I said, spot cleaning, especially if you have a cage that's higher up, or if you have a cage that's like really tall and you have to go down inside the cage, the hemostats was really useful for that. So the other thing is a snake hook. This here is a Mark O'Shea titanium snake hook from Midwest. You don't need to get a big fancy one like this. This hook, because of what it's made of, is very strong, so I can pretty much move anything around with this thing. It isn't going to bend or anything like that. But I'm not going to suggest any brands. You don't have to go with Midwest, but they're one of the most popular. But any kind of snake hook, really, that'll be the appropriate size for the animals that you're moving. Now, snake hooks aren't used just for moving snakes. They're also used, well, for me at least, when I feed snakes, I use a snake hook. As you guys know, here we breed ball pythons, and our ball pythons are in an ARS rack. Now, I'll kind of show you how I go about feeding them. These snakes, they don't see me too often. I'm either going in their cage to clean, or I'm going in their cage to feed. And I usually feed the snakes in the dark. So these snakes probably smell the rats that are in the room, so they're really ready to feed. So sometimes I'll open the, well, let's say I were to go with my hand, and this has happened before. I go with my hand, snake is waiting right there. As soon as I open the bin, bam, I get tagged right on the palm. So this new thing that I've started to do recently, because I'm pretty much tired of getting bit all the time, is that I pick up my rodent and I open the bin with the hook, and then I present the rodent. This way I minimize the chances of myself getting bit. So it is for this reason that, especially people with snake racks or people that are feeding a bunch of snakes, I definitely recommend going with a snake hook and hemostats for the feeding process. And again, a snake hook, not only used for snakes, but like big monitors, things like that, you know, croc monitors, big animals that are maybe aggressive at times. And even if you have an animal that isn't very aggressive, remember these animals are wild animals and they could always have an off day, and they're unpredictable, and you don't want to get bit if you don't have to. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this segment. Take care. Well, we're about to wrap up the show for this week, guys. Hope you've enjoyed what you've seen so far. And another kind of little segment in this show I want to do is highlight an animal, one animal in the collection once a week. So the animal we're going to highlight today is going to be none other than our big and beautiful female hognose snake. Now you can see she's not too pleased right now. Hognose, for those of you who don't know, are actually rear-fang venomous snakes. They don't have very strong venom, however, and because they are rear-fanged snakes, they actually have to latch onto you and kind of chew on you to allow the venom to drip down the grooves in those rear fangs that they have to envenomate you. So it's very rare that people actually get bit by these guys, even though this female was hissing and kind of headbutting the air. That's typically all they'll do pretty much. They won't really try to bite you. Now what's cool about hognose too is that wild hognose will usually play dead, open their mouth, stick their tongue out, and yeah, just basically look like they're dead to defend themselves. So these snakes aren't very mean, they aren't very aggressive. If I put my hand in here, you could see she's not going to try to bite me or any weird stuff like that. They're actually really tame, and they stay very small. This female is actually pretty much a pretty big hognose snake, and you could see she is under 3 feet. So actually she's maybe even under 2 feet. She's just really thick. But here she is. This is her cage. Now again, the nice thing about hognose snakes is because they stay small, they don't need very big cages. So let me just put her down in here. These are very beautiful snakes, and I recommend them for anybody starting out with snakes. Now sometimes people be a little bit worried about the fact that they are rear fang venomous, but like I said, short of you being an idiot, it's very hard to get envenomated by these guys. You have to let them, almost allow them to bite you and chew on you for a little bit before your hand will swell up. And like I said, these guys usually aren't very aggressive at all. They'll do a little bit of hissing, a little bit of fake striking with their mouth closed actually, but normally very easy to handle, and they eat like beasts. That's actually one of the reasons why you may get bit by one of these, is because they have very strong feeding response, and sometimes they'll miss the prey item and grab you by accident. And again, folks, what did I say before? Never feed with your bare hands, and we could avoid stupidities and accidents like getting bit by a hognose snake from happening to you. So I hope you guys enjoyed the show this week. Still don't have a working name for this thing yet, so any suggestions can be left down below in the comments.